Hey guys. This is part 11 of What If Naruto Was Azula's Bodyguard. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start.
We are pain, that's all. We are God.
Chapter 30. Regroup and Offers. Location, Team Avatar. They were walking. Appa, still clad in his armor, walked behind them. No one said a word. No one wanted to. The sting of failing to defeat the Fire Lord when he was weakest was continuing hit them on the backs of their heads. This is humiliating, Katara finally said. You mean getting thoroughly beaten by the Fire Nation or having to walk all the way to the Western Air Temple? Sokka asked her half sarcastically. Akela, still in armor as well, rolled his eyes. Both, she answered. They probably would have managed to reach their destination by now if they were flying. Sorry guys, Aang said. But Appa gets tired carrying all these people. He gave the Sky Bison a scratch. The armor was also a factor as it was weighing down on the Sky Bison. They kept walking the same pace, heading towards a hopeful safe place. I wonder how the rest of the troops are doing, Teo said aloud as he pushed himself forward. They're probably on their way to a prison, Haru told him. Seems like my dad just got out and now he's going back in. The bitterness couldn't be more obvious. I miss Pipsqueak, the Duke declared. I miss not having blisters on my feet, Sokka replied. He had gotten so used to flying on Appa again, even after they had lost him in the desert. Hey, we're here, Toph declared, stopping at the edge of a cliff. I can feel it. Everyone else saw the edge of a cliff. I think your feet need their eyes checked, Katara told her. All the waterbender could see was the abyss nestled in between the two cliffs and the clouds that hovered in the abyss. No, she's right, Aang said, recognizing where they were. We are here. Sokka looked around, but still didn't see it. He saw the same thing as his sister. Wow, it's amazing, Toph declared. The air nomads who built the Western Air Temple were quite possibly an odd bunch. Instead of finding a mountain to build their temple, they decided to build it in a cliffside, putting the actual buildings of the temple upside down. Thankfully, however, the floor plan and statues were built correctly and in the right direction. What the team didn't know was that Zuko and Azula were there as well, albeit further away. Zuko threw a rope down the side of the cliff, and they slid down it, aiming for a nearby platform. Once they were close to the platform, they swung off the rope and landed on the platform, one at a time. Zuko looked up at the statue of the female airbender that were lined up against the wall before looking out over the edge. He had been here before 3 years ago. Flashback 3 years ago, what a stunning view, Iroh said as he looked out over the edge. The only view I'm interested in is the Avatar in chains, Zuko told him. A bandage was over his eye, covering the new scar he had received from his father. You know, the Avatar hasn't been seen for 100 years. The chances of finding him here are very slim, the Dragon of the West told his nephew with a cautious tone of voice. First we'll check each of the air temples, then we'll scour this side of the planet, searching even the remote location until we find him. Prince Zuko, it's only a week since your banishment. You should take time to heal and rest. He turned to face his uncle. What else would I expect to hear from the laziest man in the Fire Nation? Iroh sighed in defeat. The only way to regain my honor is to find the Avatar, so I will. End flashback. He groaned and pinched the bridge of his nose. I was such an idiot. What would have happened if he had listened to his uncle more and less to the stubborn and misguided call for regaining honor? What is it, Zuko? Azula asked him, snapping him out of his thoughts. Just embracing the irony, he told her. I started my search for the Avatar here. I see. They both heard the lowing of a familiar beast. Moving quickly to hide behind the statue, they watched as the Sky Bison landed. Should we show ourselves? She asked her brother. He looked at her and shook his head. No, for now, let's go and set up a camp in the woods. They moved away towards the nearby stairs, trying to get away from the temple. It's so different from the Northern Air Temple, Teo said as he and the Duke looked around. For one thing, they were under a cliff, not on top of a mountain. I wonder if there are any secret rooms. Let's go check it out, Haru suggested, wanting to satisfy his curiosity, and not think about what was happening with his father. He went further into the temple with Teo and the Duke. Aang tried to follow but was blocked by his staff and Katara's hands. You guys go, she told the others. I think we need to talk about some things. They nodded and went off, helping Teo up the stairs. I'll race you, Duke, Haru offered as Teo took off once he was at the top of the stairs. I told you, it's the Duke, he replied as they ran after the wheel-bound person. Why can't I go? Aang asked Katara. He really wanted to explore the temple with the others. We need to decide what we're going to do now, she explained. And since you're the Avatar, maybe you should be a part of this. He walked over to a block of stone and sat down. Fair enough, so what's the new plan? The others sat around on blocks of stone as well, effectively creating a circle. The new plan is the old plan, Sokka told him. You just have to master all 4 elements, and confront the Fire Lord before the comet comes. Oh yeah, that's great. No problem. I'll just do that, he replied sarcastically, fiddling with a pebble. Aang, no one said it was going to be easy, Katara said. Well, it's not even going to be possible. He instantly protested. Where am I supposed to get a firebending teacher? We could look for Zhong Zhong, he suggested. Yeah, right, like we'll ever run into Zhong Zhong again. They were more likely to get lost in the forest than find him again. Who's? Toph began to ask, only to stop. Oh, never mind. If it's important, I'll find out. Oh well, guess we can't come up with anybody. The air nomad jumped off the block. Why don't we just take a nice tour around the temple? Before anyone answered him, he opened up the glider and took off. Momo was right behind him. What's up with him? The blind earthbender asked. I don't know, Sokka answered before getting up as well. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to find someplace quiet. Akela stayed put. He walked away, heading into the temple. Where is he going? Katara asked suspiciously. Toph leapt down to the ground. You want to go find out? Just to make sure he doesn't do anything stupid. They went after him while Akela stayed where he was. They made sure to follow quietly, or, at least, as quietly as they could, as Sokka walked through the temple. Finally, he stopped at a door. He opened it and looked inside. Good enough, he said. He walked into the room, closed the door behind him and locked it. Before the girls could even get close to the door, Sokka started yelling. You are a spirit's damned idiot. You let this guy outsmart you twice. Twice. You should have figured out that he would have known about the rules concerning the Dai Li, and you should have realized he would have known about the Day of Black Sun. He's been in that library more than we have. But did you think it through? No. You just thought you had an ace, and you never thought about if someone else might have possibly known about it. Damn it. We lost Bae Sing Se and our dad because of your actions. You have got to use your head more, you dumbass. Both the girls just stood in silence as they heard the rant go on, the shouts from inside just barely echoing beyond the door. Come on, Toph, Katara finally said, turning around. Let's go. Who's he yelling at? Toph asked as they walked away. She hadn't felt anyone else in that room. He's yelling at himself. He always beats himself up when he thinks he did something incredibly stupid. She would have found it funny once. Not anymore. So, how do we approach them? Zuko asked aloud as they set up the camp. They tended to different things so they could finish quicker. You're asking me? Azula replied sarcastically. She was kneeling on the ground getting the fire ready, and mentally thanking Naruto for making her learn survival lessons. It's better than just talking to ourselves. Well, maybe we should just introduce ourselves. What? You mean just walk up and say hello, Zuko and Azula here? What else should we do? It's not like we have Uncle here to help us. That comment made him stop and think. He started pacing. What are you doing? His sister asked him when she noticed the pacing. Trying to be Uncle, he answered before putting on what he thought was a thoughtful expression. Zuko, Azula, you have to look within yourselves to save yourselves from your other selves. Only then will your true selves reveal themselves. He stopped walk when he realized what he had just said. Even when I'm talking for him, I can't figure out what he means. That sounds like Uncle. Incredibly cryptic and maddeningly unhelpful, Azula remarked as she went back to the fire. Tell me about it. I had to live with it for 3 years, and his tea. He groaned as he remembered a memory. Both the crew and I got scared when he wanted to try a new kind of tea that had to be made with high temperatures. We made him do it on the deck and made sure the rest of us were below deck and behind locked doors. She looked up from the fire when she heard that. Why would you do that? The last time we let him use the kitchen for tea, we had to dock for repairs because the ship had a hole in its side the size of a Komodo rhino. The smell, however, lasted for weeks. Most of the crew had found an excuse to be out on deck during that time. Once Sokka was done yelling at himself, he rejoined Katara and Toph. The three of them helped both Appa and Akela out of their armor, then got on Appa and took off after Aang, who was still flying around the temple and acting like nothing was wrong with the world, or at the very least, that side of the planet. Aang, can we talk about you learning firebending now? Katara asked him as they flew through the sky. What? He called out, pretending not to have heard her. The wind is too loud in my ears. Check out this loop. He executed a big loop, showing off. Aang, either you land right now by your own violation, or you land after I brain you in the head with the boomerang. Sokka shouted, making him flinch. I don't think he's ever threatened to hurt me before, the air nomad thought to himself. Okay, he said aloud as they landed back in the temple. We can do that while I show you the giant pie show table. Oh, you're gonna love the all-day echo chamber. I probably could have used that earlier, Sokka muttered to himself. It would have helped reinforce his yelling. It'll have to wait, Toph suddenly stated. When they looked at her in confusion, she pointed behind her. We have company. Toph, that's Appa, Katara told her. It's who's behind Appa I'm talking about. The sky bison moved away, revealing Zuko and Azula. Hello, Zuko and Azula here, Zuko said, making Azula groan. You had to go with that? She asked him. Not the issue right now, he replied, jerking his head at Team Avatar, who were preparing for a fight. We heard you guys flying around down there, so we thought to wait here. Appa stepped up next to him, roared, and then gave him a big lick. I'm sure you're surprised to see us here, he said, wiping the spit off. Not really, since you've followed us all over this side of the planet, Sokka told him, while his right hand was kept on his Jin's hilt. Right, well, want me to explain? Azula asked him. Please, by all means. She turned to face the team. We've defected from the Fire Nation, she said with simplicity. We wish to join your group and teach the Avatar firebending. You want to what now? Toph asked. You can't possibly think that any of us would trust you, can you? Katara demanded, incredulous. I mean, how stupid do you think we are? You've had your moments, Azula remarked. I mean, there was that time where you led an Earth Kingdom army to a Fire Nation colony, and didn't realize that they were going to destroy it. Katara, don't open your mouth or this will get worse, Sokka ordered his sister. He looked back at the siblings. It is hard to believe you. All the two of you ever done is tried to capture Aang. I've done some good things, Zuko protested. I mean, I could have stolen your bison in Ba Sing Se, but I set him free. That's something. Appa gave him another lick. I'm glad it's not doing that to me, Azula thought to herself, taking a small step away from the bison, just to be sure. Appa does seem to like him, Toph noted. I can understand why you wouldn't trust me, Zuko said to them. And I know I made some mistakes in the past. Like when you attacked our village? Katara asked him. Or when you stole my mother's necklace and used it to track us down and capture us? Katara closed the mouth. Sokka barked. She scowled at him but didn't push it. Nice going, Zuko, Azula told her brother with a small amount of sarcasm. You're not helping, he told her before looking back at the group. Look, I don't know about Azula, but I will admit I've done some awful things. I was wrong to try and capture you, and I'm sorry that I attacked the Water Tribe. And I never should have sent that Fire Nation assassin after you. That last piece of information got everyone's attention. You sent an assassin after them, his sister repeated. It seemed like the right idea at the time. That guy locked me and Katara in jail and tried to blow us all up, Toph told him angrily. Why don't we let the Avatar speak for once? Azula suggested. Everyone's attention fell to Aang at those words. You once said you thought we could be friends. You know I have good in me, Zuko tried to convince him. There's no way we can trust you two after everything the two of you have done. We'll never let you join us, Aang answered firmly. We're trying to help you, get it through your thick heads. Azula snapped at them, getting impatient. We're not the same people anymore. If you won't accept us as friends, then maybe you'll take us as prisoners. Zuko knelt and offered them his hands. His offer surprised his sister. She had never thought he would go this far. No, we won't, Katara shouted, bending her water out of the pouch, and making it hit him like a sledgehammer, knocking him down. Azula moved into a fire-bending stance, ready to attack. Azula, don't! Her brother told her from where he lay on the ground. Put that water away, Katara! Sokka ordered his sister. She did as she was told, but she didn't like it. The two of you get out of here and don't come back. And if we ever see either you again, well, we'd better not see either of you again, she threatened. I've heard 5-year-olds give better threats, Azula commented. Get out! She screamed. Zuko stood back up and walked away, soaking wet. Azula was right behind him, thought, not as close as to get wet. Together they climbed out of the Western Air Temple and back to their camp. By the time they had arrived, Zuko had been able to dry his clothes via minimal fire bending. I can't believe how stupid I am, he said as they walked into the camp. I can't either, Azula said. Why did you send an assassin after them and not tell me? I told you. I thought it was the right idea at the time. Yao Jing had the fact that the Avatar was alive over them, and he thought to get rid of her hold. But why hide it from the rest of us? She asked. What was I supposed to say? Hi Azula, how's it going? By the way, I sent an assassin to kill the Avatar, who's still alive. It probably would have been believable if I had said you sent him. Oh, thank you very much, she sarcastically remarked as she sat down in front of the fire. Why would they try to fool us like that? Katara wondered aloud before turning to face Sokka. And why were you not agreeing with us to make them leave? Because I was willing to give them the benefit of doubt, he answered. No one stays the same over the years. Look at the Sand siblings. They were our allies in Ba Sing Se, but then there was a possibility of fighting them in the invasion. Admittedly, he hadn't been looking forward to that, and was glad when they didn't show themselves. Well, it felt just like when we were imprisoned together back in Ba Sing Se. He starts talking about his mother, and making it seem like he's an actual human being with feelings. He is an actual human being with feelings, he remarked sarcastically. She just glared at him in response. I kind of have a confession to make, Aang said to the siblings. Remember when you two were sick and I got captured by Zhao? And you made us suck on frozen frogs? The tribesman asked. How could I forget? That was an experience he was going to remember for a long time, unfortunately. When Zhao had me chain me up, it was Zuko who came in and got me out. He risked his life to save me. No way, protested Katara. I'm sure he only did it so he could capture you himself. That could be the only explanation. That was then, but this is now, Katara, Sokka told his sister. Now isn't any different from then, she retorted. Besides, what's with all that crazy stuff about setting Appa free? What a liar! Actually, he wasn't lying, Toph spoke out. Well, at least he's not cruel to animals. That's a plus, the water paragon remarked. I'm just saying that, considering their messed up family and how they were raised, the both of them could have turned out a lot worse. You're right, Toph. Let's go give them a medal. The not as much of a jerk you could have been award, Katara said with blatant sarcasm. All I know is that while they were talking to us, they were sincere, the blind earthbender told her. Maybe you're just letting your hurt feelings keep you from thinking clearly. That's easy for you to say. You weren't there when he had us attacked by pirates, or when he burned down Kyoshi Island, or when he tried to capture me at the Fire Temple. Agreed Aang. But she was there at Tuzin, Sokka defended her. They had seen how Zuko behaved differently then. Granted, it was because Naruto showed himself, but it still counted. Well, why would she even try to defend them? Katara asked her brother. Because, Katara, Toph said walking forward. You're ignoring one crucial fact. Aang needs a fire-bending teacher. She poked him on the chest. We can't think of a single person on this side of the planet to do the job. Now not just one, but two, show up on a silver platter and you won't even think about it. She stomped on the ground, shaking the ground slightly. Katara fell silent after she heard this. I'm not having Zuko or Azula as my teachers, Aang said firmly. Aang, we don't have any other options, Sokka told him. I don't care. They're not teaching me firebending. He would rather go to Ko the Face Stealer willingly than let them teach him. Well, I guess that's settled, Katara told Toph smugly. She turned around with a frustrated growl and walked away. I'm beginning to wonder who the blind one around here really is. Toph, wait! Sokka called after her. Leave her alone, Sokka, Aang told him. If she wants to be alone, then let her. Fine, there's just one thing that's bugging me. And what is that? Katara asked. If Azula was here, where is Naruto? Night had fallen and they were asleep around the campfire. You must wake up, a voice rang in Zuko's head. It was the same voice he had heard during the eclipse. What? He asked groggily. Wake up. There's an enemy nearby, the voice said. That, along with something cracking in the forest, woke him up instantly. Who's there? He called out, trying to see who it was out there. What is it? Azula asked quietly, waking up as well. Keep quiet, he told her. Stay back. He yelled out, bending fire at the unknown person walking into the light of the fire. That person turned out to be Toph. It's me, she tried to him. She bent up a shield of rock to block the fire, but the fire curved around it. She took a step back and her feet stepped into the fire. Ow! She cried, dropping the shield and falling to the ground. Zuko rubbed his eyes and saw who it was. You burned my feet, she said. The bottoms of her feet were a bright pink. I'm sorry. He tried to apologize, standing up. It was a mistake. He ran over to her. Get away from me, she told him, turning around and bending big rocks at him, which he easily dodged. She crawled away, trying to escape. Let me help you, he told her, dodging more rocks. I'm sorry. He grabbed her shoulder, trying to make her stop. Get off me, get off me. She tore herself out of his grip and bent the earth beneath her into a rock column, hitting him in the chest and sending him flying. He crashed back into the ground in front of the fire. I didn't know it was you. Come back. He shouted at her, but she had disappeared into the forest. He threw himself back with a shout of frustration. Why am I so bad at being good? He demanded aloud. Poetic irony? Suggested Azula. Shut up, Azula. I didn't see you helping. You were across the camp before I could stand up. By then, the rocks were flying. Pardon me if I didn't want to get brained in the head. It was morning. Everyone had woken up and gathered around for breakfast. Has anyone seen Toph? Katara asked as she handed out bowls of rice to everyone. I haven't seen her since she left yesterday, Sokka answered. Maybe she's just exploring the air temple, Haru suggested. There are some pretty fun spots to practice earthbending. He had enjoyed himself doing that. I think we should go look for her, Katara decided. She'll show up when she shows up, Sokka said, sitting down. He wanted food first. We can go check for her, the Duke offered. Yeah, agreed Teo. I want to ride that tunnel down to the Hall of Statues again. It will work a lot better now that I've fixed my brakes. He, Haru, and the Duke left to go through the temple again. The others felt the entire temple shake and saw dust shoot out from a corner. Toph bent a hole in the wall and crawled out of it, falling down the rubble she made and landing on the ground, grunting in pain as she went. Toph, said Katara as she, Sokka, Akela, and Aang ran over to her. What happened? My feet got burned, she answered. Oh no, what happened? The waterbender asked, looking at her feet. I just told you, my feet got burned, she repeated herself. I meant how? Well, I kinda went to see Zuko and Azula last night. That little tidbit of information shocked everyone. You what? Asked Aang. Zuko and Azula, asked Katara. I just thought they could be helpful to us, she tried to explain as Katara got to work on her feet. And if I talked to them, maybe we could work something out. But they attacked you instead? Sokka asked, trying to get the whole picture. Well, they did and they didn't, the blind earthbender answered. It was sort of an accident. But they did firebend at you. Aang tried to clarify her words. Yes, she answered with a sigh. It's gonna take a while for your feet to get better, Katara told her as she put the water away. I wish I could have worked on them sooner. It would have been a lot easier to heal if she had. Yeah, me too, she agreed. You should have waited until this morning to go see them, Sokka told her. That way, they would have been more alert and less likely to attack her. I figured most of you would say no and would throw a fit if we went through with it anyway. You do have a point, he agreed, throwing a pointed look at Aang and Katara. They ignored it. Shouldn't we come up with a plan to stop them? The air nomad asked as he and Sokka picked up Toph. Why? He asked back. This was just an accident. Besides, what do you want to say? That we'll let them come back as our prisoners, jump them and then really make them our prisoners. You are the idea guy, Katara said to him as she followed them. They carried Toph back to the pool of water and placed her feet in it. Ah, that's the stuff, she said as she felt the coolness of the water flow over her feet. Now I know how the rest of you guys feel. Not being able to see with your feet stinks. Zuko and Azula made their way down to the temple, being careful to not fall off into the abyss. Why exactly do we have to do this? Azula asked. They said no already? This is not asking to join them, Zuko told her. This is apologizing for last night. I can't believe you're doing this. It was an accident. It was my fault. He had been the one who burned Toph. She snuck up on us. Why was she even trying to do that in? She trailed off when she saw something. Who is that? She asked, seeing a person farther down than them. Who is what? He asked back, not seeing what she was seeing. Him. She pointed down at the person. Who is that? He looked at where she was pointing. His eyes widened in both shock and panic. That's a problem. Everyone still helped Toph out as her feet were being cooled in the pool of water. Unbeknownst to them, the assassin was standing on a ledge, watching them. As he saw the Avatar come back into his sights, he inhaled. It was that point Zuko swung down and kicked him, just as he was firing a blast. His shot was off, hitting the rock above them and getting their attention. Sokka and Aang grabbed Toph. They were about to run when Zuko's voice rang out. Stop, I don't want you hunting the Avatar anymore. He told the assassin, surprising said Avatar. The mission is off. I'm ordering you to stop. He stood in front of the assassin. He was shoved out of the way. The assassin inhaled and fired again. The blast destroyed the cover of the pool of water, showering the team with rocks as they hid below the wall. If you keep attacking, I won't pay you, Zuko told the assassin, trying to firebend at him. The assassin didn't even look at him, he just held him there with a hand, letting the fire die away. Alright, I'll pay you double to stop. He tried to kick the assassin, but that only succeeded in pushing him away. He still fired off another shot, making Aang duck his head back down. This is why he is the dum-dum, Azula thought as she tried to get a good angle on the assassin without hurting her brother. The assassin turned to face Zuko and fire a quick blast at him. Zuko tried to defend himself by bending his fire into a wall in front of him. The blast hit the wall and exploded, but the force pushed him back. When the smoke cleared, the assassin did not see him. But what he didn't know was that Zuko had grabbed onto a root and was climbing back up. Azula saw that he was safe and tried to generate lightning. What is wrong with me? She wondered as she struggled. It shouldn't be this difficult. Aang decided to act. He moved out of the safety, or at least, relative safety, of the pool wall. He leapt up into the air just as a blast impacted on where he just was. In the smoke, he bent a tornado and threw it at the assassin. He leapt over the tornado and while he fell, he fired another blast at the airbender, who dodged it by flipping back away. As the assassin fell towards another ledge, he slowed himself down by grabbing the ledge above him. His metal arm tore through the stone and he landed safely on the ledge. He rolled forward as he landed and fired another blast. It hit the pool of water, harming no one. Katara decided to act. She bent the water out of the pool and leapt up, taking the water with her in a giant wave. With a shout, she swung her arms down and the wave quickly turned into ice and fired spikes at the assassin. He defended himself by bringing his metal arm and leg together, making them act like a shield. When the spikes stopped, he lowered them and looked around. He didn't see his target anywhere. They had run to around the corner, getting out of his range of vision. He fired off another blast, destroying a column. He's going to blast this place right off the cliffside, Toph said as she felt the place shake. Katara took a quick peek around the corner, only to get a blast close by. I can't step out to waterbend at him without getting blown up, she said. And I can't get a good enough angle on him from down here. I know how to get an angle on him, Sokka said. He pulled out his boomerang and pulled his sister out of the way. He stuck his head out and pulled it back when another blast hit nearby. He looked out again and another blast hit. He held out his boomerang at where the blasts were coming and swung it down to where the last shot had struck, measuring out the angle. All right, boomerang, don't fail me now, he told the thing. He threw it with all of his might. It spun around and around, curving towards the assassin. Just as he inhaled and was about to fire off another blast when he noticed the thing, but it was too late. It struck him in his third eye and knocked him to the ground. I'll give him points for creativity, Azula admitted as she still tried to generate lightning. I got him! Sokka cheered as they moved away from the corner, and he caught the boomerang. Their joy soon disappeared when the assassins stood back up. Oh, come on! The tribesmen groaned. They ran back for cover. I've got it! Azula thought as she successfully manages to generate lightning. Once it was primed, she aimed at the assassin and discharged it. Meanwhile, the assassin's vision had turned blurry, but he couldn't see his target. To clear his vision and lure his target out, he inhaled and tried to fire off another blast. But the same thing in Fire Fountain City happened. The blast turned inward on him. The moment that happened was the same moment Azula's lightning struck him. The resulting explosion was big and destructive enough to take out 2 of the temple buildings. The 2 buildings fell down the cliff, the assassin's metal arms spinning through the air, following them. As Haru, Teo, and the Duke looked on from relative safety, Aang, Sokka and Katara looked over the edge. While Sokka wore a neutral look on his face, Aang and Katara shared looks of surprise. They then looked up and saw that Zuko was still alive. He climbed up from the root onto the safety of the ledge. Why exactly did I attack him again? He asked mostly himself while he was on all fours. Because you're a dum-dum, Azula answered after leaping onto the same ledge. And where were you? He asked, looking up at her. I was trying to find a good angle on him without hitting you. Sorry if it took a while, she replied with sarcasm. Whatever. He was silent for a few seconds. That wall I bent up should have stopped the blast dead. Instead, it sent me over the edge. It was weaker than normal. I know. It took me longer than normal to generate lightning. The only time I've struggled like that was when I had just started trying to generate lightning. Something is happening to our firebending. And that wasn't good. Agreed, but now is not the time to worry about it. She helped him stand. We should probably go down to talk to them. Yeah, you're right. I'm always right, she remarked. No, you're not. They made their way off the ledge and down to where Team Avatar was waiting. Once they were down there, they stood before the team in silence. I can't believe I'm saying this, but thanks, Zuko, Azula, Aang said to the 2 of them. Hey, who threw the boomerang? Sokka asked. Hey, who threw the lightning? Azula asked back. Azula/Sokka, Zuko and Aang said at the same time. Zuko looked at the team. I know we didn't explain ourselves very well yesterday. I have been through a lot in the past few years. I've changed since Ba Sing Se, Azula chimed in. It's been difficult for us. I thought I had lost my honor and that somehow, my father could it return to me, he continued. But I know now that no one can give you your honor. It's something you earn for yourself, by choosing what's right to do. Naruto's words went through his mind. You've restored your honor back at Akawan. How right the blonde had been. All we want to do now is play our parts in ending this war. I know my destiny is to help you restore balance, he finished. The same here, Azula agreed. He looked over at Toph. I'm sorry for what I did to you, he apologized, bowing his head. It was an accident. Fire can be dangerous and wild. So, as a firebender, I need to be more careful and control my bending, so I don't hurt people unintentionally. Aang was surprised that he said. He looked at both him and Azula. I think the 2 of you are supposed to be my firebending teachers, he declared, surprising the others, minus Sokka. When I first tried to learn firebending, I burned Katara and after that, I never wanted to firebend again. But now I know you understand how easy it is to hurt the people you love. I'd like the both of you to teach me. He bowed to them both. They bowed back. Thank you, Azula said. I'm happy you've accepted us into your group, Zuko told him. Not so fast, he said, catching them by surprise. I still have to ask my friends if it's okay with them. He turned to Toph. Toph, you're the one Zuko burned. What do you think? Go ahead and let him join, she answered. It'll give me plenty of time to get back at him for burning my feet. And she would enjoy it. Sokka? All I want is to defeat the Fire Lord, the tribesman said. If they want to help, then I say let them join. There's just one question I have for them. And what is that? Azula asked. Where is Naruto? He is never far from you and yet, we haven't seen him. Everyone looked at the 2 Fire Nation siblings for an answer, just as curious. Naruto stayed behind, she answered, a sad expression forming on her face. He gave us time to escape by holding off the soldiers coming for us. Oh, I'm sorry. He didn't think that would have happened to the blonde. Don't be. It was his choice. Katara? Asked Aang, looking at her. She looked at the two like she wanted to drown them right then and there. She closed her eyes and took a breath. I'll go along with whatever you think is right, she finally said, making Aang smile. Akela padded forward and sniffed them, making sure he got their scents. We won't let you down. I promise, Zuko told them. They walked away, he and Azula followed them. Later, Sokka led Zuko to a spare room. Well, here you go, the tribesman told him. Lunch will be soon. He walked out of the room and met up with Aang, who had shown Azula where her room was. It'll take some getting used to, he admitted. I know, Aang replied as they walked away. But he was hopeful that wouldn't take them long. Zuko put his bag on the bed and started unpacking. He pulled out a picture of Iroh and looked at it. Flashback 3 years ago. If I have to, Zuko declared. I'll spend the rest of my life hunting the Avatar. I know it's my destiny to capture him. You know, Prince Zuko, Iroh told him. Destiny is a funny thing. You never know how things are going to work out. But if you keep an open mind and an open heart, I promise you will find your own destiny someday. End flashback. He smiled at what his uncle had said. That's just like Uncle, he thought. Incredibly cryptic, maddeningly unhelpful, and usually right in the end. He gave a small laugh and shook his head. Then he noticed that Katara was standing at the door, leaning against its frame. You and your sister might have everyone else here buying your transformations, she told him. But you and I both know you've struggled with doing the right thing in the past. She walked into the room and into his face. So let me tell you something right now. Either of you make one step backward, one slip up, give me one reason to think you might hurt Aang, and you won't have to worry about your destiny anymore. Because I'll make sure your destiny ends, right then and there, permanently, she threatened him with a glare. The glare suddenly turned to shocked surprise when she suddenly felt the tip of a dagger at her back. Now that is a better threat, Azula said, standing right behind her. Now allow me to give you one. She pressed the tip down slightly, making her stiffen. You make one more threat against me or Zuko, you try to kill either of us, and I don't care what the others will think. They will never find your body. Is that understood? When she didn't get an answer, she pressed down harder, making Katara whimper slightly. Is that understood? She repeated, saying each word carefully and clearly. Katara nodded her head. Good. Now leave, she ordered, withdrawing her dagger. Katara walked back to the door, stopping to glare at them one last time, before walking through it, slamming the door behind her. Zuko turned to his sister. That was not necessary, Azula, he told her. Yes, it was, she replied, sheathing the dagger. She doesn't believe what we say. Why else would she make that threat? So you gave her one as well? You may be a dum-dum, Zuko. But you are my brother, she told him. Anyone tries to harm you in any way, they will regret it. Thank you, Azula. I never thought I'd hear you say those kinds of words. People change. Besides, there's a first time for everything, right? Right, he agreed. Now, if you don't mind, I'm still unpacking. Then I'll leave you to it. She walked out of the room and made her way back to her own. She walked back in and looked at her own bag, which was still in the midst of unpacking as well. She resumed putting the stuff away, when she pulled out her prized possession. As she held it, tears began to form in her eyes. No, she declared silently, shaking her head and wiping away the tears. I am not going to cry. Location, Fire Nation. Naruto sat in the middle of the cell, hands bound behind his back. It had been a week since he had been arrested. Each day, Yao Jing would visit him. She would take him to a room where they taught unruly prisoners how to behave. She then tried to educate him, but he had acted like her lessons didn't do anything, but they did. His aching body could attest to that. Come on, sir, Ming said, walking into the cell. Lady Yao Jing wants to see you again. Is it time for another lesson? He asked with sarcasm, standing up from where he had been sitting. I can't wait. I am sorry, Lord Naruto, she said, opening the cell and leading him out of the room. The guards outside were staring at the blonde with disgust and hatred in their eyes. Why are you apologizing? You're not the one whose lessons involve trying to beat me black and blue. And stop calling me Lord Naruto or Sir Ming. I'm a prisoner, remember? I'm afraid I can't do that, sir. Every soldier who had served with Naruto was both loyal and respectful. If they had been given the order, they would try to storm the prison, bust him out, and make sure he escaped. Ming was one of those soldiers. "We're here," she said as they stood in front of a door. She opened it, and he stepped through. The minute he did, the door closed and his feet were knocked out from under him. He fell to the ground. "You are not 8, Yao Jing," he said calmly, like he didn't care what was going to happen to him. He looked up to see her standing over him. "Are you enjoying your stay?" she asked him, kicking him in the stomach. Ever since she had that one dream that left her aroused and ashamed, she poured all her efforts and focus into torturing him. She would prove to herself that she had nothing to fear from him, or the one from her dreams. He sat up from where he had fallen. "Well, the food could be better," he answered and was slapped across the face. "Are you serious? You're slapping me? Could you get any more pathetic?" Her response was to shove her foot into his back, sending him to the floor. "A little better, but I'd still fail you." "Do you think this is entertaining?" she demanded. "Do you mean your horrible attempts to torture me, or me making fun of you for said attempts?" His voice was muffled due to his face being in the ground. The injuries she was trying to inflict on him did hurt, but he tried to not let them overpower him. "If you want an honest answer, it's the latter." "What's next? Are you going to hit me with lightning? Can you even do it?" He was doubtful, very doubtful. She pulled him up and slammed him into the wall. "Let me show you!" she snarled at him. She attached his hands to chains above him, holding him there. She began to generate lightning when there was a knock on the door. "Who dares to interrupt me?" she demanded, yanking the door open. A soldier stood outside. "Lady Yao Jing, I have a message from Fire Lord Ozai," he said, sounding a little scared and nervous. "What is it?" "He wants to see Lord." He stopped when he saw the glare on her face. "I apologize. He wants to see the prisoner right away." He bowed to her and quickly left. "So, the royal flaming asshole wants to see me, huh?" Naruto asked, sounding bored. It took him long enough. "You will be respectful of my father," she told him as she punched him in the stomach and unchained him from the wall, letting him collapse to the floor. No chance in hell. He was forced to his feet and was marched out of the room. Location: Western Air Temple. "Okay, where am I?" Sokka wondered, looking around. The place was a forest at night, and in the middle of winter. He stood in a small clearing, watching the snow fall all around him. Above the pine trees, a full moon shined down on him. "You did well yesterday," a voice said to him, echoing all around him. "Who's there?" he demanded. He reached for his boomerang, only to find that it wasn't there. He knew that voice. It was the same one who told him to stop and think in the tunnels at the Fire Nation capital. "You know who I am." "That may be, but I still don't see you." He looked around, but he still didn't see who was talking. "That's because you're not looking in the right direction. I'm right here." The voice now came from behind him. He turned around and saw a great, black wolf laying on a rock overlooking the clearing. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am." The rest sounded muffled, like the wolf was trying to speak to him through a wall. "What was that?" The wolf sighed. "How disappointing. I would have thought you would have heard me by now." "I can hear you just fine right now. But you cannot hear my name and so, you cannot hear me. So tell me your name." "I have tried. You do not listen." "Well, I'm trying to listen now," he argued. "You think do, but it is still the same." The wolf rose from where it lay and padded away from the clearing. "How long will you keep plugging your ears? How long must I remain silent?" "Wait!" he called after the wolf, but he woke up instead. Akela raised his head and looked at him. "It's nothing, Akela," he said. "It's just an odd dream." The white wolf looked at him for another minute before putting his head back down. "It's strange," he thought as he put his head back down. "But it feels like I should know that wolf." He fell asleep and didn't dream of the clearing in the forest, or the black wolf. Chapter 31: New Students and Old Creatures. Location: Western Air Temple. Zuko, Azula, and Aang stood on a balcony. It had been a full day since the assassin attacked, and now, the two exiles were ready to begin teaching their student. The previous night, Sokka had told Zuko about Aang's previous attempt to learn firebending from the infamous deserter Zhong Zhong, and how that attempt ended in failure. Both Zuko and Azula were amused at how Aang's foolhardy experiment in firebending had resulted in burning Katara by accident, even if it revealed her ability to heal. I know you're nervous, Zuko told Aang. Both he and his sister stood across from the avatar. But remember, firebending in and of itself is not something to fear. Okay, Aang said, taking a breath. Not something to fear. But if you don't respect it, it'll chew you up and spit you out like an angry Komodo rhino, he shouted, making the air nomad flinch back. Was that really necessary, Zuko? Azula asked her brother while also keeping an eye at their student, who was about to jump out of his skin. Hey, our teachers did it to us. We might as well do it to our student. She rolled her eyes before looking at Aang. Show us what you got, she ordered him. Any amount of fire you can make. He took a couple of deep breaths, took a stance, and tried to bend fire. What he got was a puff of smoke. Maybe I need a little more instruction, Ji said apologetically. Perhaps a demonstration? She sighed. If you insist. You might want to take a few steps back. He did, and she took a stance. She breathed in deep and threw out a punch. A very small flame, which wasn't even blue, slipped out and faded quick. Aang applauded at her attempt until she glared at him. What was that? Zuko asked her. That was the worst firebending I've seen. He had seen his sister do much, much better. I thought it was nice, Aang offered with a weak smile. You think yours is any better? She asked her brother, ignoring the airbender. He took his stance and tried 3 times, getting the same results as her. Why is this happening? He demanded. Maybe it's the altitude? Aang suggested, rubbing his head. Yeah, could be, he agreed. They went lower in the temple. When they found a suitable spot, both Azula and Zuko tried to firebend again, only getting small flames. Azula's flames still weren't blue, they were orange. Aang sat on a broken pillar and yawned in boredom. Just breathe in, Zuko said as he tried again. Once again, he only got a small flame. That one kinda felt hot, Aang said, sitting up from where he had briefly laid down. Don't patronize me, he snapped. You know what's supposed to look like. Sorry, Sifu Hotman, the air nomad apologized. And stop calling me that. Why should he? Azula asked with a small smirk on her lips. It works. He turned to his sister. You do realize that means you're Sifu Hot Woman, right? She lost the smirk and returned her focus to trying to bend. Sokka came walking by, eating an apple. Hey guys, he said in greeting. How's it coming? Go away, Azula told him. His presence there would not help them in any way. I was just wondering. Get out of here. Zuko snapped at him. Alright, sheesh. He walked away. Aang, that's it for today, Azula told him. Are you sure? He asked. While he was excited to stop learning how to firebend, he wanted to be sure that was what she wanted. Go, Zuko and I need to talk, she practically ordered. If she had been a little angrier, she would have used her finger to point at the exit, emphasizing her point. Okay, bye. He was gone quicker than they could blink. She turned to face her brother. What in the name of Agni has happened? Why are you asking me? I don't know, he answered. His firebending had never been this weak before, not even when he had just begun to bend. Well, we need to figure it out. Nobody saw them until that night, at dinner. They stood at the edges, looking back at the campfire the others had going. Listen, everybody, I've got some pretty bad news, Zuko told them as he walked over to the fire. Azula walked beside him. Azula and I have lost our stuff. Don't look at me, Toph declared instantly. I didn't touch your stuff. He's talking about our firebending, Azula explained with a small amount of annoyance. It's gone. Somehow, that struck Katara as funny, making her laugh. Everyone looked at her as she laughed. I'm sorry. I'm just laughing at the irony, she told the two as they glared in unison at her. You know, how it would have been nice for us if you both had lost your firebending a long time ago. Well, it's not lost, Zuko told her, trying to explain what was going on. It's just weaker for some reason. Maybe you're just not as good as either of you think you are, she remarked, trying to be insulting. Ouch. Toph commented. I'll be sure to say that to you when your waterbending has diminished to the point it just looks pathetic, Azula told the waterbender in reply. Ouch again, Toph said. I bet it's because we changed sides, Zuko said. That's ridiculous, Katara said. How could changing sides make someone's bending weaker? That was just stupid. I don't know, Aang disagreed. Maybe it isn't. Maybe your firebending comes from rage and neither of you don't have enough anger to fuel it the way you used to, he told the two exiles. So, all we have to is to make them angry? Sokka asked. He looked at Zuko and Azula. Do you guys want me to poke you with my sword? Akela rolled his eyes at that. Don't even think about it, Zuko warned him before turning his attention back to his supposed student. Look, even if you're right, I don't want to rely on hate and anger anymore. There has to be another way, Azula agreed. You're gonna need to learn to your firebending from a different source, Toph said. I'd recommend the original source. How are they supposed to that? Just jump into a volcano or something? Sokka asked. It was full of fire, maybe that would do the trick. No. Zuko and Azula needs to go back to whatever the original source of firebending is. And what is that? I don't know. For earthbending, the original benders were badger moles. One day, when I was little, I ran away and hid in a cave. She could still remember being lost in the cave. That's where I met them. She had been terrified of something she couldn't see. That feeling turned to laughter when she felt a big tongue licking her, and when she licked back. They were blind, just like me. So, we understood each other. I was able to learn earthbending, not just as a martial art, but as an extension of my senses. For them, the original earthbenders, it wasn't just about fighting. It was their way of interacting with the world. She remembered copying what they did and the joy she felt when she could bend the earth. That's amazing, Toph Aang told her. I learned from the monks, but the original airbenders were the sky bison. He turned his head over to Appa. Maybe you can give me a lesson sometime, buddy. The sky bison gave a roar and turned his attention back to his dinner. This doesn't help us, Azula said. If the original benders were animals, then they had nothing to go to. The original firebenders were the dragons, Zuko said, silently agreeing with his sister. And they're all but extinct. What do you mean? Aang asked, a little surprised by what he was hearing. Roku had a dragon, and there were plenty of dragons when I was a kid. Well, they aren't really around anymore, okay? He shouted. Okay. I'm sorry, the air nomad instantly apologized. Maybe there's another way, Azula said, getting their attention. The first people to learn from the dragons were the ancient sun warriors. She walked away from the fire and back to the wall, looking at the fountain in front of her. Sun warriors? Repeated Aang as he stood up and joined her. Well, I know they weren't around when I was a kid. They died off 1,000 years ago, Zuko told him, joining the two. But their civilization wasn't too far from where we are now. Maybe we can learn something by poking around their ruins. It's like the monks used to tell me. Sometimes the shadows of the past can be felt by the present, he commented. So, you're going to go the ruins of an ancient civilization and hope to get some super sun warrior energy? Sokka asked for clarification. Do you have a better idea? Zuko asked him pointedly. Either we find a way to firebend, Azula said. Or the Avatar has to find a new teacher. Both she and her brother looked at their student as she spoke. And what she offered wasn't really an option, as the rest of the firebenders were more likely to kill him rather than teach him. The next morning, the two resident firebenders and the airbender left the others on Appa. They flew out over the ocean, settling in for a long ride. But after a while, some of the passengers began to get bored. We've been flying for hours, Zuko said, sitting in the saddle and looking down at the sea. I don't know why, but I thought this thing would be a lot faster. Appa roared in reply. Appa's right, Zuko, Aang said. In our group, typically we start our missions with a more upbeat attitude. He groaned. I can't believe this. Of course, you can't, Azula remarked from where she sat opposite of him. Don't worry, you two, Aang told them. You'll get the hang of it. Why do I have a hard time believing that? She wondered aloud. You're asking me? Her brother asked. No, I wasn't. They fell silent for the next hour, until they saw the island they were looking for. They flew inland and found the ruins of the Sun Warriors, which filled them with awe, for even though they were ruins, they were still impressive. They landed and got off Appa. This place is amazing, Aang declared as they walked through the ruins. Nature had partially reclaimed them, but they still stood out. Yeah, Zuko agreed. Even though these buildings are ancient, there's something eerily familiar about them. I can tell the fire sages' temples are somehow descended from these. And how, exactly, does that help us? Azula asked him. She could see the similarities as well, but she wanted to know if he had an actual answer. Well, we learned something about architecture, Aang told her. Hopefully we'll learn something about firebending too. The past can be a great teacher. He was about to say something else when he walked through a tripwire, pulling it and stumbling forward. The ground in front of him dropped, revealing spikes. He might have killed himself, had he not used his airbending to get him over to the overside. Zuko, Azula, I think the past is trying to kill me. Zuko knelt and looked at the tripwire. I can't believe it, he said, picking it up. This booby trap must be centuries old, and it still works. There's probably a lot more. Maybe this means we shouldn't be here. He took a few steps back and then ran forward. But instead of trying to leap over the spikes, he ran across the wall. Where's that upbeat attitude you were talking about? He asked the Avatar. He's right, Azula agreed. Landing next to them, she jumped across the spikes. Besides, people don't make traps unless they got something worth protecting. And what was worth protecting in ruins such as these? So, we keep going? Aang asked, wanting to be sure. Just keeping walking, Zuko told him. They kept walking forward and soon started climbing a long flight of stairs. At the top of the stairs, they found a mural of 2 dragons breathing fire around a sun warrior. Look, this seems promising, Aang said as he examined the mural. Though I'm not sure what this tells us about the original source of firebending. They look angry to me, Azula commented, looking at the dragons. She felt unnerved at the sight of the statues and their depictions. I thought the dragons were friends with the sun warriors. Well, they had a funny way of showing it, Zuko remarked as he started to walk away from the mural. His sister turned to follow, only to stop when the Avatar spoke. Zuko, Azula, something happened to the dragons in the last 100 years, right? Something you two aren't telling me, he said. The siblings shared a look with each other. Our great-grandfather Sozin happened, Azula told him as they walked away. What do you mean? He asked, following them deeper into the ruins. He started the tradition of hunting dragons for glory, Zuko explained as they crossed a bridge. They were the ultimate firebenders. And if you defeat one, your firebending talents would become legendary, and you would earn the honorary title, Dragon. They stood in front of another flight of stairs, with a statue of a dragon on each side. One of the statue's head had fallen off and now lay on the ground, which he walked up to. The last great dragon was defeated long before either of us was born, by our uncle. He placed a hand on the dragon's eye. But I thought your uncle was, I don't know, good. He had a complicated past. It seems to be a family tradition, Azula remarked. And besides, the last person to earn the title of dragon was you, she told Zuko. But I technically didn't defeat it, he replied before chuckling. How much do you want to bet that Dad's trying to use that to strip me of that title? No bet, she replied, chuckling as well. It would be something their father would do to discredit them. Wait, Aang said, looking at Zuko. You defeated the last dragon alive? He shook his head. No, I let it go free. Bao Yu still gave me the title of Scarred Dragon anyway. He made his way to the stairs. Let's just move on. They went up the stairs and at the top, they saw a big door that was closed shut. Aang ran over to the door and tried to open it, with no success. It's locked up, he told them. We gathered as much, Azula told him, the sarcasm blatant in her voice. She turned around and noticed the column with the sunstone embedded in it. Turning back around, she saw that it was shining down, but was being blocked by Zuko. Zuko, move. He did so, revealing the light shining down on a particular spot on the ground. It's a celestial calendar, just like the fire sages have in their temples. She looked up above the door and saw another sunstone embedded there. I bet that sunstone opens the door, but only when sunlight hits it at just the right angle, in other words, on the solstice. Monkey feathers, swore Aang. The solstice again? We can't wait here that long. No, we can't, Zuko agreed. But we might be able to speed time up. He drew one of his Dao swords and held against the light on the ground, making it shine on the wall around the door. Let's see if we can outsmart the sunstone. Moving his sword carefully, he reflected the light onto the sunstone over the door. Nothing's happening, the air nomad told him. Come on, he muttered. He held the sword at the angle, keeping the light on the sunstone. His efforts paid off when the door opened. You know, guys, Aang said as he picked up his staff from the ground. I don't care what everyone else says about you two. You're pretty smart. He walked into the room. Both Zuko and Azula shared a small smile as Zuko sheathed his sword. Then they realized what he meant. He looked the room, and the first thing he saw was a scary-looking face, looking right at him, making him gasp and flinch back. "Would you relax?" Azula asked him. "They're just statues." They walked into the room and started looking around. The statue they had first seen was just one of two sets. The two sets had several statues, each in a different position. With each position, the statues curved around to the back of the room. Aang read the inscription on one of the first two statues. "It says this is something called the Dancing Dragon," he said aloud. Putting his staff down, he took a step back and copied the pose the statue held. When he did, his foot pressed a button, causing it to go into the floor a bit. He came out of the pose and looked at the button, which came back up. He then looked at the other statues in the set. "Zuko, Azula, get over here. I want you two to dance with me," he told them, grabbing Zuko's arm. "What?" they said in unison. That had been something they never would have expected the air nomad to say, to them, at least. "Just do it." He dragged Zuko over to the first statue of the second set. "Okay, you stand there. Azula, stand behind him." He went over to his statue. "Let's follow the steps of the statues." They had no idea what he was thinking, but when they did the first pose and moved into the second, they heard the click of a button. "Don't you guys see?" he asked them as they went through the poses. "These aren't dance moves. These statues are giving us a lesson. I think this is some kind of Sun Warrior firebending form. This better teach us some really good firebending," Azula said. The three did the last pose and they heard something moving. Turning to face the front, they saw a pedestal holding a big golden egg-like stone coming out from the middle of the floor. "Hooray!" Aang cheered. "Wait, what exactly is that?" "Looks like some sort of gemstone," Zuko noted as he went over to it. "Well, don't touch it." "Why not?" asked Azula, walking over to the stone as well. "Remember what happened out there with those spikes?" he asked the two of them. "I'm just very suspicious of giant glowing gems sitting on pedestals." "Of course you are," she sarcastically remarked. "It feels almost alive," Zuko said after picking it up to look more closely at it. When he tried to put it back, a geyser of green slime shot out, sending both him and Azula flying upwards and hitting a grate in the roof. "Oh no, it's another trap," Aang said as he saw the doors close. "What gave it away?" Azula asked from where she was plastered against the grate, and her brother. "Not the time, Azula," Zuko told her before returning his attention to Aang. "We can't break free. It's like some sort of glue." Aang ran back to his staff, picked it up and leapt onto one of the statue's head. He swung the staff, bending the air to try and get Zuko and Azula free. All it did was flip them over, so their faces saw the sky. As he looked at that, he realized too late that the slime had gotten his staff. He tried to pull it free with no success. Seeing as the slime was about to get him, he leapt up to the grate and grabbed hold. But he had forgotten that the slime was there as well. "I can't move," he said, trying to break free. "Zuko, Azula, do something." "Me? I can't move either," Azula said. "Same here," said Zuko. The slime continued to rise until it pressed into their backs. For a moment it looked like it would overflow the grate, but it didn't. "It stopped," Aang said as he felt the slime settle. "Way to state the obvious," Azula said. "At least we have air," Zuko noted. "Maybe if we stay calm, we can figure a way out of this." They did try to stay calm. But as the day wore on and eventually turned into night, the calm started to get worn away. "You had to pick up the glowing egg, didn't you?" Aang finally asked Zuko. "At least I made something happen," he snapped. "If it were up to you, we'd never made it past the courtyard." "Help!" the Avatar bellowed, using airbending to enhance the shouting. But it only echoed through the ruins. No one had seemed to have heard it, except for them. "Who are you yelling to?" Azula asked him. "Nobody's lived here for centuries." "Well, what do you think we should do? Think about our place in the universe?" Zuko offered. "No way, I am not talking about that with you guys," his sister said. "And I'm kicking the ass of whichever one of you is making my leg cramp when we get out of this." She didn't know who was doing it, but she knew one of them was doing it. "Who is down there?" a voice demanded, surprising them. Standing over the grate was a Sun Warrior, an actual living Sun Warrior. Hi," offered a nervous Aang, making the other two groan. Others soon joined the warrior, who they soon figured out was the chief. He had them pull the grate free and the three dug out. They were carried down to the celestial calendar, where the remaining slime was slowly being licked off by aardvark sloths. For trying to take our sunstone, you must be severely punished, the chief declared, surrounded by his people. 4 of the warriors had bent fire and cradled it in their hands. We didn't come here to take your sunstone, Zuko told them from where he sat before, still somewhat covered in slime. We came here to find the ancient origin of all firebending. Yeah, right, the Sun Warrior holding the sunstone said. They are obviously thieves, here to steal Sun Warrior treasures. Please, Aang said to them all. I don't normally play this card, but I'm the Avatar. No one said a word at his proclamation. Just hear us out, he asked them, standing up. My name is Zuko, Crown Prince of the Fire Nation, he introduced himself, standing up. Or at least I was. And my name is Azula, she introduced herself as she too stood up. Enough slime had been licked off for them to do that. I am his sister, but I am not the princess of the Fire Nation, not anymore. I know my people have distorted the ways of firebending, to be fueled by anger and rage. But now I want to learn the true way, the original way, her brother told the Sun Warriors. I do as well. When we came here, we did not know that the Sun Warriors' civilization was still alive. I am both honored and humbled to be in your presence. She bowed her head, her brother and Aang copying her movement. Please teach us. The chief was silent as he looked at them. If you wish to learn the ways of the sun, you must learn them from the masters, Ran and Shaw, he finally declared. Ran and Shaw? Repeated Aang. There are 2 of them? When you present yourself to them, they will examine you, he told them, walking closer. They'll read your hearts, your souls, and your ancestry. If they deem you worthy, they'll teach you. If they don't, you'll be destroyed on the spot. No pressure or anything, Azula commented, making everyone look at her. Sorry, I was channeling Naruto. She wished the blonde was there with them. Finish cleaning them up and then give them places to sleep, the chief ordered before walking away. The aardvark sloths continued their slow cleaning, they are part sloth, after all. When they were finally done, the 3 were led to an empty room. They were told not to leave it for the rest of the night. They were too exhausted to even think about going past the doorframe. They practically fell to the ground, already out. When morning came, they were roughly woken up and given a light meal for breakfast. Once they had finished eating, they were led out of the room and taken to another temple building, where the chief and the Sun Warriors waited in front of a fire. If you are going to see the masters, you must bring them a piece of the eternal flame, the chief explained. This fire is the very first one. It was given to man by the dragons. We have kept it going for thousands of years. I don't believe it, Zuko said with surprise. He had never thought that something like that had existed. You will each take a piece of it to the masters, to show your commitment to the scared art of fire bending. Mr. Sun Chief, sir? Said Aang nervously. Yeah, I'm not a firebender yet. Couldn't one of my friends carry my fire for me? He felt a hand slap the back of his head, making him yelp slightly. Don't be lazy, Azula told him, withdrawing her hand from his body. If he acted like that, there was no way he could be a good firebender. The chief turned to the fire and bent 2 small flames from it. This ritual illustrates the essences of Sun Warrior philosophy. He handed the 2 flames to Zuko and Azula, before bending a third out from the eternal flame. You must maintain a constant heat. The flame will go out if you make it too small. Make it too big, and you might lose control. He offered the third to Aang. The Avatar was hesitant, at first. I'm sorry. I'm just a little nervous. He took the flame from the chief, and he was surprised at how it felt. It's like a little heartbeat, he said in wonder. Fire is life, not just destruction, the chief told him. You will take your flames up there. He pointed to a nearby mountain. The cave of the masters is beneath that rock. The 3 of them bowed to him, and made their way down the steps and into the forest. Azula and Zuko took the lead while Aang walked slower, still unsure of maintaining his flame. As the day wore on, they got closer and closer to the mountain. Zuko stopped and looked back at Aang, who had widened the distance between the 3 of them. Hurry up, he told him. I can't, Aang replied. If I walk too fast, my flame will go out. Your flame is going to go out because it's too small, Azula told him. You're too scared. Give it a little more energy. But what if I can't control it? The memories of what happened the last time he tried to bend fire came to the edges of his mind. You can do it, Zuko answered. I know you can. You're a talented kid. When he heard those words, the memories disappeared from the air nomad's mind. The rest of the walk was silent as they continued up the mountain. By the time they had reached the caves, which were 2 rocks with a hole in the middle of them and connected by a bridge and a staircase, the rest of the Sun Warriors had already arrived. Is anyone else wondering how they got here first? Azula whispered to the other 2 as the chief and 2 other Sun Warriors approached. I'm not focusing on it right now, Zuko whispered back. Facing the judgment of the firebending masters will be difficult for you, the chief told them as he approached them. He looked at Zuko and Azula. Your ancestors are directly responsible for the dragon's disappearance. The sins of our ancestors are not ours, Zuko replied. That might be, but the masters might not see it that way. They also might not be so happy to see you. I know I wouldn't be, one of the warriors said. But once they find out that I'm the Avatar, Aang began to say. Have you forgotten that you vanished, allowing the Fire Nation to wreak havoc on this side of the planet? The chief asked, cutting him off. The decline of the dragons is your burden, too. He looked away in shame. The chief slammed his staff into the ground and took a part of the flames from the 3. He then split it into 2 and gave one to both warriors. They took it and sent down the line. Each Sun Warrior would bend a small piece of the fire into a burning circle before handing off to the next person. As the chief walked away, Aang, Azula and Zuko had a hushed conversation. We could turn back now, Aang suggested quietly. We've already learned more about fire than we'd hoped. No, Azula answered. We're seeing this through to the end. We're gonna meet these masters and find out what's so great about them. What if they judge us and attack us? Well, we're the Fire Prince, the Fire Princess, and the Avatar, Zuko said, drawing one of his swords slightly to emphasize his point. I think we can take these guys in a fight, whoever they are. I'm not the Fire Princess anymore, Zuko, Azula reminded her brother. She had chosen to give up that title. Right, sorry. He turned to face the chief. Bring them out, he declared. Chanters, shouted the chief. The Sun Warriors who didn't hold a ring of fire began to drum out a beat and chanters started up, while also genuflecting. The 3 made their way to the stairs, stopping in of the chief and the 2 warriors, who then stepped out of the way. The stairs loomed over them, almost looking like a mountain itself. Aang, Azula, and Zuko all shared a look, took a deep breath, and started walking up the steps. Aang looked back once as they climbed but kept on going. They reached the top of the stairs and stood at the top, looking at the bridges as the setting sun looked down on them. Those who wished to meet the masters, Ran and Shaw, will now present their fire, a Sun Warrior announced through a horn that amplified his voice. The 3 shared one more look together and turned to face the cave entrances. Aang faced one, while the siblings faced the other. They bowed their heads and raised their hands, holding their fire in an offering position. Sound the call, the chief ordered. A Sun Warrior standing on a ledge took a deep breath and blew a horn, making nearby birds fly and caused the sounds of something crashing in the caves. When Aang heard that, he began to tremble. What's happening? He asked, turning around to face Zuko and Azula, who kept their positions. Only Zuko spared him a look when he peeked under their shoulders to see what was going on their end. When he turned back around and brought his hands back up, he realized too late that he had extinguished the small flame he had been given. Guys, my fire went out, he told the other 2. What do you want us to do? Azula asked. Give me some of yours. He tried grabbing Zuko's fire. He held the air nomad back with his free arm. No, just make your own. I can't. Then get some from those warriors. Hurry! Stop cheating off me. Don't be stingy. Will you 2 knock it off? Azula asked them as she looked them. What the 3 had forgotten was the Sun Warriors could still see them and could still hear them. As they watched what happened, every single Sun Warrior shared the same thought. That kid cannot be serious. As Aang struggled to get some of Zuko's fire, he accidentally extinguished it as well as Azula's by knocking their arms down. The noises that came from the cave were getting louder and the floor beneath them began to shake. Oh, Aang said as he looked back at the other cave. A pair of eyes briefly glowed before a red dragon flew out of the cave, roaring for all to hear, catching the 3 by surprise. As Zuko looked back at the other cave, he saw a blue dragon fly out and join the red dragon. The 2 dragons flew around the platform, circling them. Sometimes the blue one would fly above. Sometimes the red one flew above. These are the masters, Azula said in awe. Never in her life would she have thought that they would be dragons. Still think we can take them? Aang asked Zuko. He shushed the avatar. I never said that. Meanwhile, the Sun Warriors went down to their knees and the ones who weren't holding fire bowed their heads. Oh, here it comes, the warrior to the chief's left said. Any moment now, it'll be dinner time for the masters. Quiet, Ham-geo, the chief told him. What? He looked away. Everyone's thinking it. Still the dragons flew around them. They were flying in a pattern, like they were trying to say something. Aang watched them and was struck with a realization. Zuko, Azula, he whispered to the other two. I think we're supposed to do the dragon dance with them. What? Zuko asked. What about this situation makes you think they want us to dance? This did not look like a dancing situation to him. Well, I think they want us to do something. Let's just try it. We might as well, Azula agreed. Fine, Zuko agreed. But if we die because of this, I'm going to kill the both of you. He and Azula stood next to each other with their backs to Aang. All three of them took the first position of the dancing dragon. When they saw this, the two dragons flew upward. They went through the positions and the dragons followed. No one was sure if the dragons were copying the humans, or the humans were copying the dragons. When the humans moved into a position, the dragons twisted, moved, or turned in the same way. The blue dragon followed Aang while the red one followed Zuko and Azula. When the three of them moved into the last position, holding their fists out to each other, they saw that the dragons had stopped moving. They just hung there in the air, looking at them. Judgment time, declared the chief, his head still bowed. The dragons looked straight into the three's eyes. They held themselves in the air, not moving a single muscle, save for their lips which they had pulled back somewhat into a growl. Azula and Zuko looked at the blue dragon. Both nervous and scared as all hell, but were doing their best not to show it. Aang stared at the red dragon. He was also scared, but unlike the other two, he was trembling visibly. Finally, the dragons moved. They landed on both sides of the staircase. For a moment that somehow managed to take forever, nothing happened. Then the dragons opened their mouths and breathed fire, engulfing the three in a tornado of flames. The three screamed and covered their faces, trying to protect them. But they realized that the fire wasn't burning them. They uncovered their eyes, looked up and saw a wondrous thing. The tornado was made of fire, that much was true. But it wasn't the fire they were looking at, it was the many different colors of fire they saw. Orange flickered into red, green twisted into blue, purple came forth from yellow. They saw all of that, and so much more. And that was when they realized this tornado was a lesson. It was a lesson done in the form of a demonstration. I understand, Zuko whispered. The dragons somehow heard him as the tornado dissipated. The dragons, having shown what firebending was all about, flew upward. They executed a loop and flew back into their caves. And just like that, as quickly as it begun, it was over. The Sun Warriors holding the circles of fire let them die and bowed their heads in a salute. Their fire was beautiful, Azula admitted with a voice full of awe as they walked back down the stairs. She had never seen anything like that before in her life. Sadly, she also had the feeling that she never would again. I saw so many colors, Zuko told them. Colors I've never imagined. Like fire-bending harmony, Aang stated. Yes, the chief agreed as they met him at the bottom. They judged you, and gave you visions of the meaning of fire-bending. I can't believe there are more living dragons, Zuko said in surprise. Before Akawan, I had thought that my uncle Iroh faced the last dragon and killed it. So Uncle lied, Azula stated. Actually, it wasn't a total lie, the chief said, surprising them. Iroh was the last outsider to face the masters. They deemed him worthy and passed the secret on to him as well. He must have lied to protect them, Zuko realized. So no one else would hunt them. All this time, I thought firebending was destruction, Aang admitted. Since I heard Katara, I've been too afraid and hesitant. But now I know what it really is. It's energy and life. Yeah, it's like the sun, but inside of you. Do you guys realize this? He asked the chief. Well, our civilization is called the Sun Warriors, so yeah. And once again, you've proven why I call you Dum-Dum, Azula told Zuko, a small teasing in her voice. He glared at her half-heartedly before realizing something. That's why my firebending was so weak before, he turned to face Aang. Because for so many years, hunting you was my drive, it was my purpose. So, when we joined you, I lost sight of my inner fire. You're right, Azula said, seeing where he was going with this. For as long as I could remember, my drive was to be the perfect princess of the Fire Nation that everyone thought I was. When I said that Ozai wasn't my father anymore and I joined you, she told Aang, I had lost my drive too and I didn't even know it. But now, we have a new drive. We have to help you defeat my father and bring balance back to this side of the planet, Zuko declared, looking at Aang. He took a stance and tried to firebend once more. This time, he got a big burst of flame. He did another one just to make sure it wasn't a fluke. Azula did the same thing. She was happy not just to see her firebending was working, it had turned back to its blue color. Aang tried it too. He bent a fireball, and he was happy to see that he could do it. Now that you have learned the secrets, the chief said, walking towards, his face serious. And you know about our tribe's existence, we have no choice but to imprison you here forever. His statement surprised the three. Just kidding, he said, making them breathe a sigh of relief. But seriously, don't tell anyone. Don't worry, we won't, Azula promised him. She then saw something against the glare of the sun. What is that? She asked, trying to see what it was. What are you talking about? Aang asked her, turning around as well. That. She pointed at she was looking at. But before anyone could turn and see what she was looking at, it had already landed. You, said Zuko in surprise. He knew the creature that was standing over him. He had never thought to see it again. You know him? Both the chief and Aang asked him in unison. Do you remember how exactly I got the title of dragon? He asked Aang and Azula, who nodded. Meet the dragon I freed. He pointed to the creature, which was indeed the same dragon he had freed from imprisonment. He had grown bigger, and it looked like his whiskers and horns had fully grown. Yes, we were quite surprised when the young dragon had arrived, the chief explained to the three of them. He had arrived in the middle of a storm. When the masters came out to see who it was, they investigated the storm. We did as well. I am not sure about the other warriors, but I briefly saw a pair of solid gold eyes flash through the storm clouds. To the surprise of everyone who was there, the masters had bowed their heads to the storm. They took the young dragon in. Although I am glad to see another dragon alive, I still do not know what those eyes were. I know who brought him here, Zuko told him. Who was it? His king. The chief's eyes went wide. You mean? The question was left hanging, as he was too surprised to fully say it. Yes. But do you? Again, the question was left hanging. I met him myself. That simple statement made every single Sun warrior bow their heads to him in respect. Am I missing something? Aang whispered to Azula, completely confused. Who are they talking about? Even before dragons became rare to see, there was one dragon that almost never showed itself, she explained quietly. This dragon was the first, said to be created by Agni himself. He wanders the world. Many have gone looking for him, most to challenge him, but they never found him. My father and grandfather were among these people. He only shows himself to those he finds worthy, and even then, he has never truly revealed himself. He is the king of all dragons, Bahamut. As she finished explaining, the Avatar looked at the exiled prince of the Fire Nation with awe in his eyes. So do you still want to fight? Zuko asked the dragon. The dragon shook his head and, to the surprise of everyone there, save for the chief, he lowered his head. What's he doing? He asked, unsure of what just happened. When he first came here, the young dragon would have gladly fought you, had you come looking for him, the chief explained. But the masters taught him, and he realized that by freeing him, you had saved his life. He owes his life to you and would gladly be in your service. You want to serve me? He asked the dragon, who nodded his head. No, I won't take you as a servant. His words surprised everyone there. But before they said anything, his next words calmed them down. But I'll take you as a friend. He held his hand out. What do you say? Everyone fell silent as they waited for the dragon to answer. He raised his head and roared, breathing fire into the air. It flew upwards and made the very air shimmer. Once he was done, he brought his head down and pressed his nose up against his hand. Every single person knew that the dragon had accepted his offer. It's good to know you, Fanning, he told the dragon, giving him a name. Fanning, Azula repeated. That's an appropriate name for him. I know. Location, Western Air Temple. They had flown back to the temple, Aang and Azula on Appa, Zuko on Fanning. When everyone saw the dragon, they were shocked, surprised, and intimidated all at the same time. But their attentions were diverted when Aang told them that they could firebend again. With this technique the dragon showed us, he explained as he, Zuko and Azula went through the movements and bending fire. The three of us will be unstoppable. They finished the movements, earning applause from the others. Well, it's a great dance, I'll admit, Sokka said. It's not a dance, it's a firebending form, Zuko told him. Sorry, for a minute, I thought we would be tap dancing our way to victory over the Fire Lord, he sarcastically commented. It's a sacred form that happens to be thousands of years old, Azula stated, walking over to them. Oh yeah? Asked Katara, acting like a bit of snot. What's your little form called? The dancing dragon, she answered, making the others laugh. Oh sure, laugh it up because we're using a form with an odd name. How much do you want to bet there's an ancient waterbending form called the flopping fish or an earthbending form called the blundering badger mole? That sounds stupid, Toph declared. And yet, it's possible. Anyway, Zuko interrupted the conversation. Sokka, do we have any meat to cook? Yes, we do, he answered. But why are we cooking meat? They had already eaten. I'm feeding Fanning. He pointed back at the dragon, who lay curled up around the fountain. I figure if one of you doesn't want to become a snack for him on accident, we feed him. Everyone heartily agreed on that idea. Location, Fire Nation. Sir, you have a visitor, Ming said from the door. How many times do I have to tell you to stop calling me sir? Naruto asked, facing the wall. His hands were chained to his back and his body still hurt from his last session with Yao Jing. I'm a prisoner. That may be, a new voice said, surprising him. But you're still my commanding officer. He stood up and faced the visitor. Bao Yu, he greeted the head of the Yuan archers, who stood before the bars. My lord, he greeted back, saluting his leader. He chuckled. Normally, I'd chastise you for saying that. But you'll keep doing it even if I'm in here. So, what's up? The archer looked back at Ming, who nodded and closed the door. My lord, I am here to inform you that soldiers who are loyal to you are currently planning to break you free, he told the blonde. His face, which held a carefree look, hardened immediately. What? Yes, sir. Both I and Ming are involved in this plan. We will free you the day they will move you to Lieutenant Bao Yu. He roared unexpectedly, surprising Bao Yu. If you were in this cell with me and if my hands were free, I would punch you for even thinking of doing something like that. Then I'd have you bring in Ming so I could hit her too. But sir, the Yuan archer protested. We're trying to set you free. Once you're free, we'll be able to have you smuggled out of the Fire Nation. And if the prison break is foiled or they catch you before I'm out of the Fire Nation? You know as well as I do that every soldier who had a hand in this plan will be killed, if they're lucky. If they're not, Yao Jing will get her hands on them. And there was no promise that they would live if that happened. Sir, we're doing this for you. And I don't want you to. He shouted at his subordinate. No soldier is going to sacrifice his life just so I might escape. That's an order. You will tell every single member of this plan to cease and desist. No escape plans will be made, and they will most certainly not be carried out. Sir, you'll never be able to escape once the Fire Lord has sent you to. I know where I'm going, Lieutenant, he cut him off. I also know what I'm doing. Have I ever let you down before? Do you really want me to answer that, sir? He laughed. Okay, fair point. Let me rephrase it. Have I ever let you down when it counted? No, sir, you have not, the leader of the Yuan archers admitted. I'll be fine, Bao Yu. Look at it this way, where I'm going, at least I'll be out of Yao Jing's hands. If that happens, his body might get a bit of a break. I see the point, sir. He turned around and made his way back to the door. It's been an honor serving with you, sir. You're making sound like I'm already dead. Don't worry. You know I always pull through. You and the others will know when I'm okay, I promise you that. He stopped at the door. He turned back around and gave him a salute. Yes, sir. He turned around and walked through the door, leaving Naruto alone. Location, Western Air Temple. Zuko looked around to see where he was. It looked like he was standing on a mountain ledge. If he looked above, all he saw were clouds. If he tried to look down, he couldn't see the bottom. There was enough room for him to walk around, but if he wasn't careful, he would fall off. I see you've recovered your spark, a voice spoke. Who's there? He asked, looking around. But he could see where the clouds off of the ledge. I'm right here, dum-dum, the voice said, coming from his right. He turned to see another human. He was dressed in a plain traveler's cloak, covering his entire body, except for his head. His skin had the paleness of people who hailed from the Fire Nation. But it was his eyes and hair that got your attention. His eyes were a bright blue and his hair was a fiery red. Who are you? The person groaned. Are you kidding me? You still can't hear my name? It's... At that point, a wind came through and muffled his voice. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Of course you didn't, dum-dum. Don't call me that. It was bad enough his sister did it. He didn't need a stranger calling him the same. Why? You are one. What gives you the right to insult me? What gives me the right? He repeated. I have more than the right to insult you, Zuko. I am still pissed off at you. How do you know my name? We've known each other for quite some time and you have the audacity to ask me that? He growled before turning his back. Go away. Don't come back until you can hear me. Hold on. He reached out to grab the person, only to wake up in his bed. He sat up. What in the name of Agni was that all about? He asked himself. He made it sound like I did something to offend him. He shook his head. It's been a rough couple of days. I just need to get some sleep. He put his head down and tried to fall asleep. When he did not meet the blue-eyed, red-haired person again. Chapter 32, Getting in Disguises. Location, Western Air Temple. They sat around the fire at night. Things had been relatively peaceful, and they were enjoying it. It was almost a week since Zuko, Azula, and Aang went to the ancient city where the supposedly extinct Sun Warriors resided, and in the case of the two exiled royals' case, they were able to firebend while keeping themselves at peace. In Aang's case, he slowly entered a routine every morning. No one can make tea like Uncle, Zuko declared as he poured tea into cups. But hopefully, I've learned a thing or two. You lived with him and his tea for 3 years, Azula told him. You probably would have learned something. Would you guys like to hear Uncle's favorite tea joke? He asked the others. Do you remember the entire joke? She asked before anyone could say yes. Just the punchline, he admitted. It was a little embarrassing, but it was the truth. Then please don't. He just started handing out the tea. It's nice to get a chance to relax a little, Toph commented. It hardly ever happens. She took the cup he offered her. Hey, can I talk to you for a second? Sokka asked the scarred dragon as he offered a cup of tea. Akela, stay put. He stood up and walked away. Zuko put down the tea tray and followed him. Unbeknownst to either one of them, Azula took notice and kept a close ear on them. So, what's up? The exiled prince asked. If someone was captured by the Fire Nation, where would they be taken? Sokka asked back. What do you mean? Who was captured? When the invasion plan failed, some of our troops were taken, he tried to explain. I just want to know where they might be. When he heard that, Zuko had a vague idea of what he wanted to know. I can't tell you, he said. What? Why not? Trust me. Knowing would just make you feel worse. He turned around to walk away, but Sokka stopped him by grabbing his shoulder. It's my dad. He was captured too, the water paragon explained. I need to know what I put him through. It's not good, Sokka. Please. He turned back to face him. My guess is, they were taken to the Boiling Rock. What's that? He had a feeling from the name alone it wouldn't be something good. But he still asked? The highest security prison in the Fire Nation, Zuko told him. It's on an island in the middle of a boiling lake. It's inescapable. So, where is this place? Why do you need to know? What are you planning? Nothing, he answered, trying to keep the conversation from going where he didn't want it to go. Boy, you're so paranoid. The scarred dragon frowned, not believing a word of it, either did his sister. It's in the middle of a volcano between here and the Fire Nation. You guys actually flew past it on the way here. Thanks, Zuko. He yawned and stretched his arms exaggeratingly. Just knowing makes me feel better. He walked past Zuko to the others. Yeah, I'm sure it does, Zuko muttered sarcastically, going back to the fire. They ate their dinner, and everyone soon went to bed. Later in the night, when everyone was asleep, Sokka walked carefully away from the group, being very careful not to wake up Akela or Fawning. He made his way over towards Appa and started climbing up his leg, waking the Sky Bison up. He shushed him, which made him put his head back down. Sokka kept climbing up the side. When he was about to climb into the saddle, Zuko was already there. Not up to anything, huh? Zuko asked. He yelped in surprise and fell to the ground. Fine, you caught me, he admitted, getting up. I'm gonna rescue my dad. You happy now? I'm never happy. Look, I have to do this. The invasion plan was my idea. It was my decision to stay when things were going wrong, he told Zuko as the scarred dragon leapt down from the saddle. It's my mistake and it's my job to fix it. I have to regain my honor. You can't stop me, Zuko. He pushed him out of the way and began to climb up Appa again. You need to regain your honor? He repeated. Believe me, I get it. I'm going with you. No. I have to do this alone. How are you going to get there? On Appa? Last time I checked, prisons didn't have bison daycares. That stopped the tribesman, realizing he made sense. We'll take my war balloon. He turned around and walked away. Sokka hopped off Appa and followed him. They made their way over to where Zuko had parked the war balloon. It took you long enough, Azula said, surprising them from she leaned against the side of the balloon. At her feet was a small pack. It was obvious that she had been waiting. What are you doing here? Sokka demanded. I'm joining you. You're going to the Boiling Rock, right? How did you know that? I listen to what people say. Why are you coming with us, Azula? Zuko asked his sister. I know you don't really care about who Sokka's trying to free. You're right, I don't. I'm coming with you to free Naruto. What do you mean, Naruto? Sokka asked. It had been a while since he had seen the blonde, but he saw no reason for him to be at the prison. It's the one place our ex-dad would send him if he was pissed enough. Why would the Fire Lord get pissed? He had always thought that the man had been in complete control. How else would he have managed to keep the war going in favor of the Fire Nation? You really don't know Naruto, do you? She asked with a small smirk on her face. He can be vastly annoying when he wants to. Why are you doing this, Azula? Zuko asked her. It's my fault he was forced to stall for us. I have to get him out. And? He asked, leaving the question hanging. Because. She trailed off, suddenly feeling a little embarrassed. Because what? Sokka asked a little impatiently. Because I love him, she answered, getting all out in one breath of air. Zuko and Sokka noticed a small blush on her face. They wisely chose not to comment further. Zuko also decided the conversation was done. Let's go, you two. The Duke brought Appa his breakfast, which he threw into his mouth. As Katara walked up, she noticed that a sleeping Momo held a note. Was that a note? Fast as she and Aang joined her. Yeah, Katara answered, picking up the meat. What does it say? We're running low on meat, so we're going hunting and fishing. Sokka, Zuko, and Azula, she read aloud. Aang yawned and went back to get reacquainted with his sleeping bag. One more thing. Aang, practice your firebending while we're gone. Do 20 sets of fire fists, and 10 hot squats every time you hear a badger frog croak. Zuko and Azula. At that exact moment, a badger frog went off. Nobody else has homework, he groused, standing up. There's something else, she said. If he starts to complain, his workout is doubled. Azula. What? Why? He protested. If he whines, it's tripled. Zuko, she read. How do they know what I'm going to say? You've never taken lessons from Naruto. Get to work. Azula. She flipped the paper over, still reading. They have got to be joking about all that work. They're not joking. You'd best get to work. Zuko has fun in keeping an eye out on you. Sokka, she finished. He turned to look at the dragon. Fanning did seem to be looking at him intently. All right, I do it, he muttered aloud as the others walked away. He stood up and went to work. 1 hot squat, 2 hot squat, 3 hot squat, 4 hot squat. Location, war balloon. They flew through the clouds in the war balloon. It was a bit cramped, but the three of them managed. However, the atmosphere was pretty much awkward. As Zuko heated the furnace, Sokka and Azula looked over the side of the balloon. Pretty clouds, Sokka noted after he and Zuko shared a glance and looked away. Yeah, fluffy, Zuko agreed. Could this get any more awkward? Azula asked herself. Sokka started whistling, getting Zuko's attention. What? He asked. What? Sokka asked back. Oh, I didn't say anything. They fell silent again. You know, a friend of mine actually designed these war balloons. No kidding. Yep, a balloon, but for war, he said. Agni, help me, Azula prayed/begged quietly. The awkwardness on the balloon was liable to drive her up a wall, and they didn't have walls. If there's one thing my dad's good at, it is war, Zuko stated. Yeah, it seems to run the family, the tribesman remarked. Hey, hold on. Not everyone in our family is like that. I know. He looked at the exiled siblings. You both have changed. I meant our uncle. He was more of a father to me, the scarred dragon admitted. And I really let him down. I think your uncle would be proud of you. Leaving your home to come help us? That's hard. It wasn't that hard. It seemed fairly easy, Azula agreed. Really? Asked Sokka. You two didn't leave behind anyone you cared about? The siblings shared a look. Well, I did have a girlfriend. My, Zuko admitted. That gloomy girl who sighs a lot? Asked the tribesman, looking for clarification. Yeah, he answered. Everyone in the Fire Nation thinks we're traitors. I couldn't drag her into it. My first girlfriend turned into the moon. That's rough, buddy. I am beginning to regret coming with you too, Azula said. I'm seriously considering throwing myself overboard. If it would help get away from all this, she would do it. Please don't do that, Azula. That means I have to fly this thing down and fish you out of the sea, her brother told her. So, who did you leave behind? Sokka asked her. Some friends. Like who? Mai and Ty Lee, she answered. You mean the bubbly one? Yes. And Naruto, of course. We're done talking about this, she growled. He had enough sense not to push it. They kept on flying, the day eventually turning into night. Sokka had fallen asleep, Zuko manned the furnace and Azula kept a lookout. We're there, she called out, getting Zuko's attention and waking up Sokka. There's plenty of steam to keep us covered, Zuko noted as he looked at the steam emitting from the center of the volcano. As long as we're quiet, we should be able to navigate through it without being caught. As they got closer to the rock, he opened the furnace and put more heat into it, making the balloon rise. It cleared the ridge, but once they got into the steam, the fire in the furnace went out, making the balloon to quickly descend. We're going down. The balloon's not working anymore, he announced in a whisper as he tried to get the furnace going again. Sokka looked over the edge. The air outside is just as hot as the inside, so we can't fly, he told them. So what are we supposed to do? Azula asked him. I don't know. Crash landing? The balloon hit the boiling water and skidded along the surface of it. Some of it splashed onto Sokka's hand. Although he did cry out in pain, he covered his mouth before doing so. It hit the outskirts of the prison, sending the three flying out of it. As they got their bearings back, they saw the balloon was destroyed. How are we gonna get off the island if the balloon doesn't work? Zuko asked. We'll figure something out, Sokka told him. I suspected it might be a one-way ticket. You knew this would happen and you wanted to come anyway? Azula asked him. My dad might be here, he replied as he approached the balloon. I had to come and see. Uncle said I never thought things through, Zuko said. But this is just crazy. Hey, I never wanted you two to come in the first place. And for the record, I always think things through. But my plans haven't exactly worked, so this time, I'm playing it by ear. So there. He tried to push the balloon into the water but pulled his hands away due to the heat. Instead, he kicked it into the water. What are you doing? Azula asked him. It doesn't work anyway, and we don't want anyone to find it. They watched as the balloon sank into the water. I hope you know what you're doing, Zuko told him. There's no turning back now. Let's just get inside, Azula said. They spent the rest of the night slowly getting into the prison, making sure they weren't caught. By the time morning had come, they had found a storage room full of spare guard armor. I hope these disguises work, Zuko said to the others as they left the storage room, dressed in guard uniforms. We just need to lay low and find my dad as soon as possible, Sokka told him. The three of them were wearing helmets to keep their faces hidden. Naruto too, Azula chimed in. That's when they heard boots running down a hallway and they soon saw guards coming down the nearby corridor. Guards, one of them called. There's a scuffle in the yard. Come on. They followed the guards out to the yard. There was already a ring of prisoners stand around two people. When they forced their way to the front, they saw a guard and a prisoner circling each other. I didn't do anything, the prisoner said. I'm going back to my cell. He turned around and started to walk away. The guard whipped his fire at the prisoner's feet. Stop right there, Chit-sang, he ordered. Zuko tried to approach but was held back by Sokka's grip on his arm. We can't blow our cover, he told him. Azula nodded briefly in agreement. I have had it with your unruly behavior, the guard told Chit-sang. What did I do? He asked. He wants to know what he did, he repeated. Isn't that cute? He asked Zuko and Sokka. When they didn't answer, he lifted his visor and gave them a look. Very cute, sir, Zuko said. Super cute, Sokka agreed. Personally, I don't find it cute at all, a voice from outside the ring spoke out. He made his way to the inside of the ring. Both Sokka and Zuko heard Azula's small sigh of relief. The person who had spoken out and was now standing in the middle of the ring with Chit-sang and the guard was Naruto. This doesn't concern you, prisoner, the guard said, spitting out the word like it was something that disagreed with him. Are you going to make me leave? He asked pointedly. He pointed at Chit-sang with his thumb. What did he do? He didn't bow down when I walked by. What? Chit-sang asked. That's not a prison rule. Well, it's fairly simple to do, Chit-sang, Naruto told him, walking over to the guard. You simply get on your knees and bow your head, like this. He demonstrated the bow, making the guard smug. What is he doing? Sokka asked. Just watch, Azula told him. And then, the blonde continued, as you stand up you do this. He stood up and then rammed his fist into the guard's stomach, making him double over and fall to the ground. That way, he'll bow to you too. That got the other prisoners laughing. Seeing that his work was done, he walked away. The prisoners briefly parted for him, and then surrounded him, allowing none of the guards to reach him. The guard, embarrassed at what happened, stood back up, and threw a fireball at his retreating back. But before it could even get halfway, Chit-sang stepped in and knocked it aside with his own firebending. The guard smiled smugly at the prisoner. Firebending is prohibited. You're going in the cooler. You, he pointed at Sokka. Help me take him in. And you too. He pointed at two different guards. Take him back to his cell, now. He pointed at Naruto. Meet back here in an hour, Sokka told both Azula and Zuko. He ran over to the guard and helped him take Chit-sang to the coolers. It didn't take them long, as the guard knew where they were going and Sokka followed his lead. The warden will deal with you soon, the guard told him before throwing him into a cooler. Can you believe this guy? He asked Sokka as he closed both the doors. Prisoners, he said, playing along. Am I right? Ugh. Tell me about it. Both Zuko and Azula were grabbing lunch in the lounge. Hey, new guys, a nearby guard called out, grabbing their attention. I know it's the rule to have your helmet on at all times, but this is the lounge. Relax. But what if there's an incident? Azula asked him. Yeah, if we're not prepared, we could get hit on the head, Zuko agreed as they walked over to the group. His comment got the other guards laughing. Give it a week, a female guard said to the first guard. They'll loosen up. So, hear anything good lately? Zuko asked them, sounding like a curious rookie who wanted to hear some gossip. You mean you haven't heard? It's been the talk of the prison as well as the rest of the Fire Nation, the male guard said. Heard what? The Fire Lord finally legitimized Lady Yao Jing. She's now the heir to the throne. What? Zuko and Azula said at the same time. Never did they expect their father to do something like that. Wow, you really didn't hear about it, the female guard remarked. What happened? Azula asked. I thought Prince Zuko, or at least Princess Azula, was to get the throne. Did you hear about the invasion? The first guard asked them. Only the official version, that the capital was attacked, but the invaders were defeated. The fewer number of facts they claimed to know, the better for their cover. That much is true, the female guard said. But what you don't know is that both Prince Zuko and Princess Azula turned traitor and ran away. The Fire Lord sent troops after them, but Lord Naruto held them off long enough for the two to get away. Once he was sure they were gone, he allowed himself to be arrested. The Fire Lord didn't kill him? Zuko asked her. The male guard shook his head. From what I heard, he was given to Yao Jing, who tried to torture him. After a week of that, he was brought to the Fire Lord. He was told that Yao Jing had become the crown princess, and it was now his job to protect her. If that's true, then is he here? He refused to do it, the female guard answered. Lord Naruto said, and I quote, I swore to protect the princess of the Fire Nation. Not the result of what happens when you can't keep it in your pants. How do you know he said that? Azula asked. Silently, she was glad her bodyguard had refused to protect her bastard sister. My brother was there in the throne room when the Fire Lord and Lord Naruto had that meeting. Both the Fire Lord and Yao Jing were furious at his refusal, and the Fire Lord threatened to kill him. He replied that if he was killed, there would be spontaneously sprouting arrows in the forehead. So the Fire Lord sent him here, with instructions for it to be beaten regularly. The guards actually did that? Zuko asked. Some of them tried, the male guard said. But Lord Naruto was the one who beat them into a bloody pulp. Since then, no guard has ever followed the instructions. Is there anything else you want to know? Yeah, about those invaders. It sure looks cold in there, Sokka remarked as he looked inside the cooler at Chit-Sang. The prisoner looked completely miserable. That's why we call it the cooler. He won't be firebending in there, the guard said. He saw someone coming down the hall. It's the warden! Look alive! They stood at attention as the warden came to stand in front of the door. One of the warden's guards opened the doors. So Chit-Sang, I hear you used firebending to try to escape, the warden said to the prisoner. You should know better. I wasn't trying to escape, Chit-Sang protested, shivering in the cold. He's lying, the guard said. I saw him with my own eyes. The warden ignored him and kept his eyes on the prisoner. No one has ever escaped from here. I'd sooner jump into the boiling lake myself than let that record fall. Don't forget it. Now go back to your shivering. He walked out of the cooler, and the door closed. Sokka stood at a railing, looking down at the prisoners in the yard. Hey there, fellow guard, another guard said, coming up to him. How goes it? Zuko? He asked, lifting his visor. He shushed him. Listen, I asked around the lounge. There are no Water Tribe prisoners, he said, lifting his own visor. I'm afraid your father's not here. What? Are you sure? Did you double-check? Even as he asked those questions, he felt like his hope were dying right in front of him. Yeah, I'm sure. No. No! He banged his hands against the wall. If his father wasn't here, why did he come? I'm really sorry, Sokka, the scarred dragon told him. So I came all this way for nothing? He asked. I failed, again. What would Uncle say? Zuko asked himself. He looked up and saw the clouds. Sometimes, clouds have two sides, a dark and light and a silver lining in between. It's like a silver sandwich. So, when life seems hard, take a bite out of this silver sandwich. As he was speaking, Sokka noticed something in the yard, or rather, someone. Maybe we haven't failed after all, he declared, running over to the rail to get a better look. That's the spirit, the exiled prince said. I can't believe that worked. I didn't even know what I was saying. No, what you said made no sense at all. But look. He pointed down to a prisoner sitting on a rock. It's Suki. Before Zuko could really ask who Suki was, a bell rang off. Prisoners, back in your cells, ordered a guard. All the prisoners began to move back inside. The door to Naruto's cell opened, making him look over to see who it is. How lucky for me, the warden's come to visit me, he said sarcastically as the warden stepped into his cell. I'd greet you, but I don't like you. I hear you humiliated one of my guards this morning, Lord Naruto, the warden said, making the Lord sound like it should be in the garbage heap. Don't bother calling me Lord. I know you hate saying it. As for your guard, you heard right. They just give me so many opportunities, it's hard to resist, he remarked with a small grin. It's too bad this prison doesn't have solitary confinement. You would spend the rest of your life there. In case you haven't noticed, this entire prison is solitary confinement. We're in the middle of a boiling lake, how more confined do you want to get? You should know that you will be properly punished for your actions, the warden told him, ignoring the question. What? You're gonna have the guards try to beat me black and blue again? You do remember what happened last time, right? The warden gave him a cruel smile. Oh, don't worry, you'll find out soon enough. He turned around and walked out of the cell, the door closed behind him. What did he mean by that? He asked as he sat back down on the bed. It was just a slab of metal attached to the side of the wall. He hadn't even been given the common courtesy of a mattress or a pillow. I don't know, Kit, the QB said. But you should probably be careful. Whatever your punishment is, I have a feeling it won't be good. Yeah, I have that same feeling. Suki lay on the bedding, staring up at the wall. When she heard the door open and saw a guard come in, she sat up. What is it? Did I do something wrong? She asked. You mean you don't recognize me? The guard asked. You people all look the same to me. That's funny. I would remember the guy I had kissed and felt up at the same time, he said with a smirk. How do you know? She started to say, standing up from the bed, when she remembered where she had seen that smirk before. Sokka? She asked hesitantly. His reply was to simply take off the helmet. Sokka, it's you! She rushed over and gave him a tight hug. He returned it with equal measure. I'm so sorry I made you go through torture, Suki, he whispered. Never had he wanted to kill someone than when he had heard about what the Kyoshi warrior had gone through. She didn't know how he knew that, but she didn't care at that point. It's okay, I got through it. I knew you would come for me. The other Kyoshi warriors, are they here? He asked her, breaking the hug somewhat. No. I don't know where they are, she answered. They locked me in here because I'm the leader. Well, you won't be here for long. I'm busting you out. I'm so glad to see you, Sokka. The two of them shared a kiss. Meanwhile, Zuko stood guard outside. When he saw a guard coming, he tapped on the door, alerting Sokka. When the guard came up to the cell, he stood in her way. Excuse me, she said. I need to get into that cell. No, you can't go in there, he told her. The lights are out. The prisoner could sneak up on you. Step aside, fool, she ordered, putting her hand on his shoulder. He grabbed the arm and used it to slam her into the door. Hey, what are you doing? The two of them began to struggle with each other. As that went on, Sokka put his helmet back on and snuck out of the cell. The guard saw him. Guard, help. I think he's an imposter. Arrest him, she ordered. Get him off me and arrest him. He walked over to the two, grabbed Zuko by the arm and threw him down to the ground. You're under arrest, he declared. Don't worry, I'll find Azula, and we'll figure it out, he whispered as he pulled him up off the ground. What is going on now? Azula asked herself as nearby guards all seemed to be in a rush, running down the corridor one or another. Finding Sokka nearby, she went over to him. What happened? Zuko got caught, he told her in a whisper. What? How could he have been caught now of all times? You heard me. Just what we need, a complication, she groaned quietly. Trust her dum-dum of a brother to make things complicated. Well, where were you? I was trying to find Naruto. Any luck? None. Once she had left the lounge, she had looked high and low for her bodyguard. But since she did not know where he was, it became rather pointless. Zuko had been forced into prison garb and was now standing in an empty room. It had felt like an hour when the door finally opened, showing the warden. Well. I never thought I'd find you in here, Prince Zuko, he said with an evil smile. How did you know who I am? Zuko asked. How could I not? You broke my niece's heart. You're Mai's uncle? He asked, surprised by the fact. I never meant to hurt her. Quiet. The warden barked at him. You're my special prisoner now. And you'd best behave. If these criminals found out whom you are, the traitor prince who let his nation down, why they'd tear you to shreds. I think I'd have one person amongst those prisoners who would back me up. He knew Naruto would help him. Don't be so sure about that. So, what's in it for you? He asked, crossing his arms. Why don't you just tell my father and collect a reward? Oh, in due time, believe me, I intend to collect. I just have one question for you. Where is Princess Azula? We went our separate ways after we escaped from the Fire Nation, he lied. He may be a prisoner, but there was no way he was giving up his sister. The warden said nothing in return. He simply walked out of the room, leaving Zuko alone. Later, he was led out of the room and was handed a mop. When Sokka and Azula found him, he was mopping the floor next to Suki. Oh good, you guys have met, Sokka said. Actually, we met a long time ago, Suki said. We did? Zuko asked. Yeah, you kinda burned down my village. Oh, sorry about that. Nice to see you again. What else could he have said? He is such a dum-dum, Azula muttered. They made sure to remain unseen as they talked. Fortunately, the side of the stairs they were mopping ended in a corner, keeping them hidden. So listen, I think I have an escape plan, Sokka told everyone. I checked out the coolers again. The point of them is to keep firebenders contained, right? Yeah, Zuko answered, waiting to see where he was going with this. So, they're completely insulated and sealed to keep the cold in. Well, to keep the cold in, it also has to keep the heat out, right? Just get to the point, Sokka, Suki told him. Azula nodded in agreement. She wanted him to hurry it up. It's a perfect boat for getting through the boiling water. Zuko, Suki, and Azula all shared a look. The cooler as a boat? Asked Zuko. Are you sure? I'm telling ya, it'll work. I walked around the perimeter. There's a blind spot between two guard towers. It's the perfect launching point. I already tested it out. We'll roll the cooler into the water and just float with the current. It'll take us straight across. If we don't make a sound, no one will notice. And bing bang boom, we're home free. But how are you going to get the cooler out? Suki asked. Yeah, how are you going to get the cooler out? Asked Chit-Sang. He stood on the stairs looking down on them, before jumping over the rail and joining their meeting. We didn't say that, Sokka instantly lied to him. Yeah, you heard wrong, Zuko agreed. I heard you're hatching an escape plan, and I want in, the prisoner told them. There's nothing to get in on. Leave now or you won't like the outcome, Azula threatened him. Well, I can come with you, or the warden finds out, he threatened in return. I guess we have no choice, Suki admitted. If the warden found out, they would be dead before they could make a move. Okay, you're in, Sokka told Chit-Sang. He gave Zuko a wench. Now, first we need someone to unbolt the cooler, from the inside. Oh, I can get you inside, Chit-Sang promised. He stood up, walked in full view of the guards and just stood there. A few seconds later, Zuko backed into him, mopping the floor. Hey! What are you, stupid? Watch where you're going. He grabbed Zuko and shoved him away. Hey, you watch who you're shoving. He pushed him into the middle of the room, getting people's attention. I think you mean whom I'm shoving. The two of them began to fight or, at least, fake a fight. As the prisoners began to cheer and urge the fight on, Sokka ran over to it. I need backup over here, he shouted. Chit-Sang tossed Zuko to the ground. He leapt into the air and tried to do a flying elbow on him, but the younger of the two rolled away and bent fire at him, which he avoided by hopping into the air. No firebending, a guard told Zuko, breaking through the thin crowd. Into the cooler. As Zuko was led away, Sokka shared a quick look with Suki, who was still mopping the floor, before walking away. Azula walked away as well, still intent on finding Naruto's cell. Later, Sokka made his way to the cooler. Zuko was here and opened the doors. I can take you back to your cell if you've learned your lesson, he told him. He raised his head and breathed a little fire, warming himself up. Yes, I have, completely, he said, standing up and revealing all the bolts and screws the cooler was supposed to have. He smiled. I got Suki and Chit-Sang out of their cells a few minutes ago, he whispered. They'll be waiting for us at the shore, Azula too. Someone's coming. He yanked Sokka into the cooler and closed the door. Yeah, new arrivals coming in at dawn, one guard told the other as they walked through past the coolers. Anybody interesting? Asked the other guard. Nah, just the usual, he answered. Some robbers, a couple traitors, some war prisoners, though I did hear there might be a pirate. No fooling. Both Zuko and Sokka looked at each other. War prisoners, Zuko repeated. It could be your father. I know. Suddenly, things were beginning to look up for him. Well, what should we do? Are you going ahead with the plan or are we waiting another night? I don't know. Is it right for me to risk Suki's freedom, all of our freedom on the slim chance that my dad is gonna show up? It was a risky decision to even begin thinking of. It's your call, Sokka. That night, Chit-Sang, Azula and Suki were waiting on the shoreline. They heard something scraping on rock. Turning around, they saw that Sokka and Zuko were rolling the detached cooler down the slope. Took you long enough, Chit-Sang told them as he and Suki helped with the rolling. This here's my girl and my best buddy, they're coming too. He looked down at the two extra people there. Fine, Sokka said. Everybody in the cooler, let's go. They moved the cooler into the water, ready to go. I'm not coming, Azula stated, surprising Sokka and Zuko. Why not? Asked her brother. I came here to free Naruto. I just only found where his cell is. I'm not leaving this rock without him, she told him firmly. Her feet were planted, and she didn't look like she was going to move willingly. That's your choice. He turned to face Sokka, who had uncovered his Water Tribe gear from where he had stowed it, and put on his Jin. But are you sure you want to go? You're the one who said you wanted to redeem yourself? Redeem your honor. Rescuing your dad is your chance. Your dad? Repeated Suki, surprised to hear that little tidbit of information. Sokka turned to face them. If I had just cut my losses at the invasion, maybe we wouldn't be in this mess, he told them. Maybe sometimes it's better to call it quits before you fail. No, it's not, Zuko told him. Look, Sokka, you're going to fail a lot before things work out. That's supposed to make feel better? He asked, standing up and walking away. Even though you'll probably fail over and over and over again. Seriously, not helping. You have to try every time. The scarred dragon walked forward and grabbed his shoulder. You can't quit because you're afraid you might fail. Hey, if you two are done cuddling, can we get a move on? Chit-Sang asked pointedly. No. I'm staying, Sokka declared, earning a nod of approval from Azula. You guys go. You've been here long enough, he told Suki. I'm not leaving without you, Sokka, she replied. I'm staying too, Zuko said. Not me, I'm out, Chit-Sang declared. He pushed the cooler into the water and hopped in. Let's roll, baby. We gave up our only chance of escaping, Sokka stated as they watched the cooler float away. I hope we haven't made a huge mistake. The cooler floated away on the current. The problem was the current was a slow one. By the time morning had come around, the passengers were sweating and still in view of the prison. This current is so slow, Chit-Sang groused. He stood up and ripped a piece off the cooler. I can use this to paddle. When he put the makeshift paddle into the water, some of it splashed onto his hand. He dropped the paddle, stared at his hand, and then screamed loudly in pain. He would later claim it was a manly yell. His scream managed to attract the attention of a guard. The alarm bell rang, and the warden showed up on the wall. Guards, secure the perimeter and lock down the prisoners. Now, he ordered. The guards kept control over the prisoners by use of fire whips. While this all went on, Sokka, Zuko, Azula and Suki were trying to sneak back into the prison. The plan failed. They're caught, Sokka announced as they heard the alarm go off and the guards disappearing. They moved along the outside of the wall faster. Get the fugitives and throw them in the cooler, the warden ordered as he stood next to a large ballista. They are in a cooler, sir, a guard manning the ballista told him. One's that bolted down, and not floating in the water. This is a lockdown. We have new prisoners arriving. Everything must be completely secure. The guard got the point. He aimed the ballista down at the cooler, and fired the bolt. It hit the cooler and the line tightened up, pulling it back to the prison. Sokka and the others managed to get back into the prison. The gondola's moving, Sokka stated as they watched with a clear view of the gondola. The car came into the platform and stopped. This is it. If my dad's not there, we risked everything for nothing. We had to, Suki told him, taking his hand. Come on, he urged the gondola as it stopped, trying to will its door opened. One of the guards opened the car door, and the first prisoner stepped out. Is that him? Zuko asked the tribesman. My dad doesn't have a nose ring. He turned his attention back to the gondola. Where is he? He asked as the prisoners walked out of the car. Finally, the last one got out. That's it. That can't be it. I'm sorry, Sokka, Suki told him. Oh no. He had risked everything again, and nothing had come of it. Hey you, said one of the guards, getting their attention again. Get off the gondola. When he heard that, his hope rose. When the last prisoner stepped off the gondola, he was overjoyed. Dad, he whispered. The door to Naruto's cell opened. On your feet, the guard ordered. What did I do this time? Naruto asked, not moving from his slab of a bed. 3 more guards entered the cell. You didn't do anything. It's time for your punishment. The blonde was yanked off the bed and led out of the cell.